I've never actually asked this before, but out of curiosity, how many of you seated here today have had a proper conversation with an identical twin before? If you have, could you please raise your hand? Okay, just a couple hands here and there. Well, let me tell you that by the time this speech is over, each and every single one of you seated here today can say that you have. I have asked countless questions in my life, but definitely not as many as I've received. Like everyone, I've received questions from my parents, my teachers, and my friends. But besides them, I've probably received 100 times more questions from people I hardly know. There's nothing too complicated in this. It's just because of the simple fact that I have a double. I'm an identical twin, and my sister and I, well, we look pretty identical. And it's in these people's natures to be curious, to ask questions. So they ask away, and these questions have been embedded into my daily routine that it feels so weird if I don't hear at least 3. Which one are you again? How do you tell you and your sister apart? Wait, I'm so sorry. Did I offend you? Does it get annoying when people mix you up? How is it that your sister is so good at art, but you can't draw a stick figure to save your life? And my personal favorite, if I pinch your sister, will you be in pain? This one is mostly from ages 7 and below, but you'd be surprised. However, in the past 16 years of my life, there's only one question that baffled me so much it took me 1 minute to understand it, and then I proceeded to stare at him for another minute after. This was the question. Do you ever talk to yourself accidentally thinking you're talking to your sister? All of these questions stem from one thing: curiosity. It's rare to have someone who looks exactly like you, thinks like you, and acts like you, and people get curious. They want to know more. In fact, 1 in 50 live births are of identical twins. That means identical twins make up 2% of the world's population. Only 2%. So that's why I'm here today, an ordinary girl who just so happens to be part of that 2%, spilling my life as an identical twin to you. What is it like being an identical twin? This is definitely the most prevalent of all questions, and if I had to answer this in a short and simple way, I'd tell you that I got myself a deal, and here's why. Of course, there are the obvious upsides to being an identical twin, which doesn't require me to explain, such as the ability to switch places as seen in iconic movies like The Parent Trap or Switching Goals. But what I can tell you guys about is the time where my twin and I attempted it and failed horribly. We were in year 6 and we decided we wanted to prank our Arabic teachers, as we were certain neither of them had a clue that either of us had a twin. So I sat in her class and she sat in mine. However, I'm not really too sure what was going through our minds, because she was in the advanced level and I was in the beginner's level. And yes, that is possible. Arabic and I are like water and oil. And maybe you've guessed it by now, but things didn't go too well for me sitting in an advanced class armed with my so-called knowledge on the subject. You can probably imagine how it went when my teacher was surprised to see me actually compose proper and sensible sentences, and my sister's teacher shocked to hear her articulate response to, "What do you do in your free time?" In my defense, I swear it sounded like she wanted to know my name. So she repeated herself, thinking I might have misheard her or something. But I knew I messed up. So the second time, I told her my age. Needless to say, the class burst out laughing, immediately yelling that she'd been pranked. It feels weird to think of how it must have been like for all of you guys growing up, without having a best friend who went to school with you and lived with you. For us, it was a 24/7 playdate, pulling all the dining chairs into a line and pretending we were on a bus or a train or a spaceship, whatever we fancied that day. Or turning our room into a horror house and then taking turns scaring the living daylights out of each other, and our poor mother in the process. Or playing together outside and seeing who could shove the most snow down the other's backs. And for our parents, well, it was a burden off of their back, because they never had to worry if we would get lonely, because they knew that as long as we had each other, we would always have each other's backs. It's hard to put into words the sheer magic of being identical twins. It's like there's this invisible golden thread that connects us, prompting us to say the same things and think the same things. It scares me sometimes how we can both say the same dumb joke at the same time, or write extremely similar things for our classes and then have the teacher ask us if we worked on the assignment together, or look at each other at the same time during a movie or a TV show, because I know exactly what she's thinking, because I'm thinking the exact same thing. My face looking back at me is my earliest memory, except it wasn't my face. In 16 years together, and I feel like I know her better than I know myself sometimes. Her every facial expression has been embedded into my life and my routine, just like the questions have. I don't need any other person to push me to be the best version of myself, whether it's in school or sports or life in general, because that person has been beside me since the day I entered this world. Not in front of me, most definitely not behind me, besides me. We celebrate each other's victories bigger and better than we do our own, and we remind each other that failures are just learning experiences more times than we remind ourselves. However, it's not all fun and games, and I've realized that as we've grown up. Don't get me wrong, being an identical twin is my life's biggest blessing. Sometimes it feels like it's my biggest curse too. I move countries every 3 years, which means every 3 years I need to start my somewhat pre-rehearsed introduction speech all over again. It goes a little like this. Hi, I'm Avanti, and I have an identical twin, so if you see someone who looks exactly like me, but they don't say hi or they don't wave back, chances are it's my twin, and she has no idea who you are. It happened too at my current school just a few months ago. I was absent one day from school because I was sick, and my psychology teacher asked my sister why she ditched his class. She stared back puzzled because she had no clue who he was, and then he got confused because she was confused, but then she just knew it must have been one of my teachers. It's kind of become instinct now to turn around whenever someone says Aditi, which, by the way, is my sister's name. It's kind of become instinct now to turn around whenever someone says Aditi. And people ask me all the time, well, if you're not Aditi, then why did you turn around? And I tell them, I wish it was as simple as only having to respond to my name, but I've annoyed a lot of people in the past not turning around when they say Aditi because they were actually looking for me but said my sister's name instead. People mix this up all the time. And as a kid, I used to find that funny and then I would love correcting them, but now, not so much. I've taken economics from the start of this year. My sister moved out of business management and into my economics class about 3 weeks later. It took her 1 second being in the class for my teacher to start confusing me with her, even though I was sitting in the same place I'd always been in. And now it's a constant internal battle as to why people can't remember me for me and not have to attach my sister's name to anything I do. One of my teachers, actually, every time I enter the lesson, she asks me, "Where is your sister?" or "Why is your sister not here yet?" I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was supposed to have a GPS tracking her move. Don't worry, I'll be sure to remember it for next lesson. I will admit, my sister and I, we check a lot of boxes when it comes to being stereotypical identical twins. I mean, we look alike, we think alike, we have the same interest in a lot of things, and we have this and that in common. But what people tend to forget and what people tend to overlook is that we have our differences too. And sometimes to me, it feels like the whole world is just so focused on our similarities when I just want them to take a quick look at what makes us unique individually. Every time my sister has an art exhibition going on, I'm asked, "Why can't you draw as good as your sister?" It's what makes her her. Or every time I've done a speaking event in the past, my sister's been asked, "Why have you not taken part in the event?" It's what makes me, me. I'm sure all of you here would think I'm being very unfair if I asked Dan over there why he didn't receive the same test score as Tommy over here. Then why is it that my sister or I are asked this question after every single test we take? It's come from other peers, from our friends, or sometimes even our teachers. We may have been one human split into two, but I can assure you that there are not two Aditis walking around this place. There are not two Avantis walking around this place. There's one Avanti and one Aditi, and that's the way it's supposed to be. No deal in life is perfect. Things come with chips and broken zippers and one less coat of paint than what they're supposed to have. And these annoyances, questions, mixing-ups, and lack of individuality that I've mentioned, these are the small imperfections to what is otherwise my perfect identical twin deal. But that's the small price we pay for having someone around, having someone to talk to, rant to, gossip with, watch shows and movies with, cook with, bake with, study with, revise with, and the list, it goes on. And in the grand scheme of things, I know that I truly did bag myself a deal. So my time here today is coming to an end. But before I go, I truly do hope that I've told you guys something new today. So next time, in the future, when you do meet an identical twin, you know a little bit more about them and the life they lead without having to ask them any questions. Thank you.